In this tutorial, I'm going to cover terrains. Since these tutorials take so long to make, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There is an excellent tutorial by Brackeys that covers the basics of terrains in Unity 2019 and onward. The YouTube comments section is already not made for troubleshooting or hosting threads, but more importantly, your question likely falls into one of two categories. Either it is so common that it could be answered by a quick Google search, or it is so uncommon that you can't find the answer after searching for it. You're not likely to get a response, certainly not a quick response, in the comments section. If your question falls in the latter category, then search the VRChat Discord to see if it was asked there. If not, your best option is to ask in either the Unity or VRChat forums or VRChat Discord, depending on whether it is a problem specific to either Unity or VRChat. Share detailed information, screenshots, console errors, and most importantly, be respectful. Please be courteous and thank them. With that out of the way, on to the tutorial. First, something that you should absolutely have turned off. If you use 2D foliage, please do not make them billboards. This will make them face the camera at all times, which is extremely noticeable and immersion breaking, especially in VR. Okay, PSA over. Another quick thing. From my personal experience, there are types of landscapes that are better to try and make as your first terrain, and some that are worse. The first landscape that I tried to make was a valley inspired by the Austrian Alps, but I quickly realized that it would take a lot of time and effort to make look good, and required me to learn many skills that I didn't yet have. I then settled on creating a small beach island, which was much easier. Not only was there not a lot of terrain that I needed to sculpt, it was far easier to make it look decent than a more detailed landscape. It was also easy to surround with a natural and believable barrier, that being the ocean, which hid where the small terrain ended and functioned as an intuitive way for players not to go beyond the boundary. I eventually made a valley landscape, which is honestly probably one of the worst looking scenes I've created from a technical standpoint, but I still like the aesthetics and vibe of it. I could have certainly made it look better, but that would have taken quite a bit of time. TLDR, choose an easier landscape to make for your first terrain. Even after you already have experience making terrains, if you plan on creating new ones, consider how long it might take to make them look good. Many of the tutorials on terrains explain how to make them, but don't exactly explain what they are or why they are so useful. Unity terrains are optimized for large landscapes. This is because the terrains mesh can tessellate. It's better I show you first. If you click on the terrain, then go up to Gizmos and tick Mesh Wire, it shows you the polygons of the terrain. As I move the camera closer, you can see that the number of polygons increases, and as I move further away, they decrease. You can switch to a different scene view rendering mode to make this more visible. This helps with optimization of both the rendering and the collision physics, to my knowledge anyway. Terrains have the ability to paint multiple materials on them. This is driven by a splat map, explained in more detail in this video Unity made themselves. Obviously, if your terrain only has one material on it, then it's probably not going to look super realistic. The displacement of the terrain is driven by a height map. This was discussed in Brackeys' video. The downside of this is that you can't make overhanging cliffs with terrains, but in that case, you would instead want to place static meshes, like rocks or overhanging cliffs with LODs instead. Speaking of, the problem I see with most terrains made by beginners is that they are boring. Usually the problem isn't that the landscape the terrain itself is trying to replicate is bad, it's that there just isn't enough stuff on the terrain. It should be the foundation upon which the rest of the scene is laid. The terrain itself, the two-dimensional plane, should not be the star of the show. What matters is the grass, trees, foliage, bodies of water, or any human-made structures on top of it. That, along with following visual composition rules, which always apply, is what will make your terrains not only visually interesting, but also engaging to explore. For terrains, they often aren't perfectly smooth. Of course, that all depends on the type of environment that you are trying to create. If you are making a snow field, the parts covered in snow are likely to be smoother due to how snow falls and is packed on the ground, and then how it is blown around. As always, looking at reference is key. Not only that, researching why the terrain looks the way it does will help you in creating it and making it look more realistic. Yes, it may sound boring to some of you, but nearly every professional artist, especially 3D artists, delve deep into not only how things look, but why they look the way they do in order to recreate them in their medium of choice, in this case, 3D software. If you think that your terrain needs more detail, then you can use certain brushes after you already have the general shape of your terrain. Obviously, you probably want it at a very low intensity. And if that's too much, you can always smooth over it again. But sometimes you want the opposite of smooth. Sometimes you want sharp, like for peaks of mountains. For eons, the Unity terrain tools didn't have a way to easily do this until now. With the terrain tools, which I'm sure you installed when watching Bracky's video, one of the tools you get is Sharpen Peaks, which is pretty self-explanatory. It is indispensable when sculpting mountains. If you look at the terrain texture layers, they typically have 3 slots, one for an albedo map, one for a normal map, and one for a mask map. A mask map packs several different textures into one, and the computer reads each channel of the mask map, red, green, blue, and alpha, as its own grayscale texture. You can find mask maps in terrain texture asset packs on the asset store. If you want to convert a PBR material you got elsewhere, which includes the different maps as separate textures, then you can use a texture packing tool, like the one that comes with Poyomi or Z3Y shaders, the latter of which I'll demonstrate. Go up to Window, Z3Y, Texture Packer. The mask texture supports a metallic map in the red channel, an ambient occlusion map in the green channel, a height map, which greatly enhances material blending, in the blue channel, and a smoothness map in the alpha channel. And this isn't plagiarism because I acknowledge that I just ripped this line straight from Unity's tutorial, so go watch that one, and other tutorials, besides just mine. There are many of them out there. You want trees. You want a lot of them. Rather than painting all of them on the terrain yourself, sometimes it's easier to have Unity place a ton of them for you, and then you can just erase the ones you don't want. You can do that with the Mask Place Trees option under the Tree tab of the Terrain component. I was originally planning to go into more detail about this, but Unity's tutorial already did that for me, so just go watch that. If you're making a valley, or any scene that isn't enclosed by water or some other kind of natural boundary, you may want to have some mountains in the background. Fear not, you don't have to sculpt them yourself. You can grab an asset like this one off of the asset store and then just place these lower quality mountains around your terrain. You might want to take the colliders off of them. Now, you have some less distracting natural boundaries to your scene. Whether or not you put colliders around your terrain so that the players can't escape, or don't put any there so that the players can just fall off, well, that's up to you. LODs aren't too hard to make. First, make sure that you have LOD models ready to use. So a highest detail version of a model, and then at least one lower detail variant. And also, side note, this wasn't in the script, but usually you don't need like more than 2 LODs. It's sometimes you might need 3, but it's really like you're sacrificing a tiny bit of CPU power for possibly larger gains on the GPU, but that's not something I'm going to get into. So usually you don't need to create like more than 1 LOD that's just like really low quality. Then make an empty game object in the inspector. Right click the inspector, empty game object, or go up to the top bar, game object, empty game object, or use the hotkey Control-Shift-N. Add an LOD group component to it. This next part is important. Do not add the models directly to the LOD component. First, drag them into the scene, put all of the other components you want to put on them first, like a convex mesh collider or a box collider, then drag them back into the project tab to make them a prefab. Then you can drag each prefab into each slot of the LOD group. You can add or remove slots by right-clicking. You can change the fade distance by dragging the borders. LOD bias dictates the distance at which LODs fade. A higher number means higher quality further away. It's set in the quality settings. Go to Edit, Project Settings, Quality. If you're uploading to VRChat, then you have to work with these graphic settings, which you can't change because individual players can swap between these presets in the in-game settings menu. I'll also link to some other decent free terrain tutorials in the description. Thank you so much for supporting my Patreon. With your support, I will be able to build a new, even more powerful PC for game development.